This is the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm Cecil Miller, and I'm joined by my good friend Josh Merrill today. And we are going to talk about Wildcard Weekend. So, obviously, the playoffs have started. The regular season is over. We have 12 teams and a winner take all, like it is every year. And I think it's safe to say that this year, both the NFC and the AFC seem pretty wide open to me. Uh, I've got to tell you, generally there's a team every year that, you tend to feel was domination or they're going to dominate or they've got it in the bag and no one can touch them. This year's kind of an anomaly. There's teams that have wonderful things going for them and every team's got a weakness. So I think this is going to be a very exciting postseason. And with that, we're going to get right to it. We're going to start with the games in the NFC here on Wild Card Weekend. And first up, we're going to talk about the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to be going into Dallas this Saturday to play the Cowboys. And we are looking at, like I said, a 10-6 Dallas team, the winner of the NFC East. I definitely think that they took advantage of a down NFC East is definitely my feeling. Anyone who knows me personally knows that I was on the Redskins train this year, and I would admit that had the Redskins remained healthy, that they probably would be playing right now. But that's neither here nor there. What I can definitely say is that this Seattle team is tough. They got hot at the right time, and they have been running the ball exceptionally well. So, Josh, I just wanted to take it over to you, man. What do you feel about this game on Saturday?
Honestly, I don't like Dallas's offense this year, but going against Seattle, a young Seattle defense that hasn't quite produced what to their old standards, I love Dallas offense against Seattle's defense, and the main reason being they got Zeke Elliott, and he's led the league in rushing this year, and against a newer, smaller linebacker core with, say, the one-handed kid out of college, Josh, what's his name?
The one-handed kid out of college.
Yeah, what's his name?
Oh,
He's had a really good Griffin. His last name's Griffin from UCLA. He's had a really good year, but they're so small up front now with Michael Bennett being gone and him starting. I just see this running game and this offensive line of the Dallas Cowboys grading the Seattle's defense. And I honestly see Prescott having a 300-yard game and 2 passing TDs.
Ooh. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So you've got Dallas.
I got Dallas. I'm going to say 28-17.
Wow, okay. The bold pick. When I look at this game, I'm looking at a couple of things. Certainly, Dallas definitely got hot. It seemed as if the Cooper trade really, obviously jolted a spark in that passing game. I don't trust Dak Prescott. In crunch time, I don't trust him to make the right decisions. I definitely think that he has taken many steps back since his rookie year. And when I look at this Seattle offense, they lead the league in rushing yards per game right now. I watched them a couple weeks ago against Kansas City just maul that defense. They were just running them over. Now, again, that's not the greatest defense in the world. I mean, that's not a true test. But, I mean, to be clear, they are just running the ball with authority, which is definitely something that's kind of a new thing for Seattle. I think being a run-first team is something that Pete Carroll has definitely gotten more comfortable with. I'm looking at this as Seattle's going to go in there, control the clock. They won in week 3 when they had met. They had won by, looks like, 2 touchdowns. And I don't see this one being much different. I trust Seattle. I trust Russell Wilson to make enough plays. And I trust the Seattle defense enough. I don't trust Dak Prescott. And I like the Seattle Seahawks to win this one on the road. And I'm thinking something along the lines of 28-17 Seattle.
Ooh, okay, so we just flipped there. All right.
Yeah, I don't think it's a high-scoring game for either team. I think Seattle's just looking to control the ball, keep the ball out of Dallas's hands. And I think Prescott makes a couple critical errors, and I think that ends up being the difference here.
Okay. All right.
So moving on then, we our other NFC game this weekend, we have the Philadelphia Eagles that will be going into Chicago to play the Bears. The Eagles 9-7, wild card 6 seed, defending Super Bowl champions. Obviously, you've got the Chicago Bears, winners of the NFC North, winners of I believe it was 11 games this year. They are tough as nails on defense. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, there was a big to-do about the Khalil Mack trade and the hefty price that was to pay. I believe that trade absolutely made the Bears much, much better. I believe without that trade, we may not even be talking about this game. The Bears are playing typical Bears defense, tough-minded, and I think this is going to be a good one. This is the only game this weekend in the wild card round that doesn't have, what I'm trying to say, these teams haven't met this season. Every other game that this weekend, there's going to be a game that you can look at from earlier in the year. This isn't the case. The Eagles have not played the Bears this year, so we don't have anything to go on in that regard. The game, like I said, is in Soldier Field. And what are you thinking about this one?
Honestly, I'm a big fan of what the Bears have done this year. The Eagles have struggled mightily, and then Carson Wentz being injured. Now it's officially Nick Foles' job for the playoffs again. But last year, when the Eagles made their run, Jay Ajayi went into the playoffs and he was healthy. Well, Jay Ajayi has been on IR, so I really don't see how the Eagles can do it with a backup quarterback. Yes, Nick Foles had a big year last year in the playoffs, but this year he don't have a run game. So I really see the Bears taking over this game via their defense and just shutting down Nick Foles. I see Nick Foles throwing 2 picks. I see him throwing under 200 yards, and somehow the Bears, with their mediocre offense, win 20-3.
I can't agree with you more on this one. I got to tell you, the Philadelphia, this kind of just feels like deja vu, kind of, in that, they're coming in hot at the right time. But I'm with you. The run game is not the same. Nick Foles, they've come out and said that he doesn't have broken ribs, but I guarantee you he's going to be in some pain this Sunday while he's playing. And I think he's going to make those critical mistakes. Like you said, this Bears defense is the real deal. I think that the Bears definitely got a favorable matchup in this one, in that the Eagles will be more one-dimensional. And I think that they can tee off on Nick Foles. And it really is unfortunate that Carson Wentz isn't able to play in this one just like last year, because I think he would make a world of a difference. But given what we have in front of us, I definitely think that the Bears, and, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Mitchell Trubisky. I've gone on the record and, said, look, this isn't something, he's going to make the right throws. He's going to manage the game, quote unquote game manager. That's what he's going to do. They don't have anything on offense that's going to scare anybody, but he's going to not make mistakes. He's going to manage the team, and they're going to score just enough points to pull this one out. I like the Bears to win this game 21-14, and I like them to move on.
And just a quick thing about the offense of the Bears, which I really didn't think. They are top 10 in the league in scoring offense. Just a fun fact. Now, that's probably their defense scoring the points, but fun fact.
That is a fun fact. And one cannot underestimate the hiring of Matt Nagy. If there was anyone that was going to get the best out of Mitch Trubisky, it was definitely this coach. So I think he's definitely getting the most out of what he has.
They have a lot of playmakers on offense. Another year, I see them being even better offensively, honestly.
We will see. Moving on to the AFC. Now, I saved the AFC for later because these two games, to me, I have been all week in debate with myself about. We've got some exciting games here. We've got the LA Chargers that are going into Baltimore. Now, in week 14, Baltimore had gone into LA to StubHub Field and had defeated the Chargers 22-10. Obviously, this is a rematch. This time we're in Baltimore. Obviously, a tough place to play in the postseason. We've got the LA Chargers, 12-4, identical record with the 1 seed Kansas City Chiefs. Unfortunately, the 5 seed and having to go on the road with a wonderful record as a result of being in what I consider to be the toughest division in the AFC this year. Unfortunately, 12 wins wasn't enough to get it done for them, but obviously very talented, veteran quarterback Philip Rivers, very, very good offensive playmakers, and some guys on the defense that are tough as well. What are you thinking about this one, Josh?
Well, I'm not a big believer in Philip Rivers, to be honest. I never have been. He always, for whatever reason, they fail in the playoffs. You can't always blame it on Philip Rivers, but he's always struggled. And before this, it was even sold that the Chargers were going to make the playoffs, I felt the Ravens would have their number. And the reason being, the Ravens' offense, nobody really knows how to game plan against them right now because they're still learning Lamar Jackson. He's not a pure passer, but it puts a lot of strain with how athletic he is. But I'm not even going to talk about offense. I'm going to talk about the Ravens' defense. They're number 2 in points scored against, and they're number 1 in yards allowed. And right now, they're just playing some of the best defensive football since they've had their core of Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. This is an amazing defense for this time in the era of football, to be honest. It really is. They've done a great job. I really see Philip Rivers. He'll have a solid game, but he'll make some critical mistakes. And then if it all depends on if Melvin Gordon's going to be able to play. If he's not going to be able to play, then there's no way the Chargers win. There's absolutely no way. I want to say probably Ravens 20 and Chargers 10.
Oh, all week I've been on this one. I've been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. The LA Chargers were a trendy pick by many to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl this year. I was definitely not one of those guys. But I can definitely see where someone would think that. I looked back through the history books, and the last time that the Chargers made the playoffs, which was 2013, they beat the Bengals in the Wildcard round, but who doesn't beat the Bengals? Going further back, it's hard to disagree with you because Philip Rivers in the playoffs is kind of average. I'm just kind of looking back here. The last time they made a deep run in 2007, they got to the AFC Championship game, lost to New England 21-10. But there just hasn't been a whole lot of consistency since. There's been years where they're one and dones. They obviously had a stretch from 14 till now where they didn't make the postseason. I just feel bad for Philip Rivers. I feel like this guy deserves a ring. He's a borderline Hall of Famer. Some people would tell you he's in already. I'm not quite sure about that. But, man, it's a guy that you really want to see win a ring. And I say all that to say that they're not going to win. I believe that they're going to go into Baltimore, and this defense for the Ravens is going to smother them. I think Rivers is, again, going to make some key mistakes. I'm not completely sold on the Chargers defense. They've got a good little individual pieces, but as a unit, they can definitely be exposed. I've definitely seen plenty of teams do it to them this season, and I am a firm believer that what you're going to end up seeing is this is going to be really close, down to the fourth quarter, and I think the Ravens win this one by a field goal, and I have this one being 23-20 Ravens.
I say that's still bold, Miller. The fact that you say the Chargers are going to score 20 points on the Ravens, that's bold right there.
Yeah, it is bold. We'll see how Melvin Gordon does. I have faith that he can carry the load to a degree. We'll see. I just don't see a scenario where they go into their win.
I
definitely think it'll be closer than the first time they played, even though the game is in Baltimore. I don't see it. I really don't see it happening. The other game we have, the last game we have on the docket this weekend is Indianapolis, the Colts, the winners of 10 games, 10-6 this year, and the wonderful Sunday night winner-take-all matchup against the Titans last week. They won. They got in. To me, Andrew Luck is, without a doubt, the comeback player of the year. Frank Reich, to me, should be the coach of the year. This is a team that was supposed to be rebuilding, and instead of rebuilding, they acted like that they didn't have any kind of problems and won 10 games. And this is in spite of the fact that they lost week 1 to my Cincinnati Bengals and looked pretty average. They're a team that definitely got hot at the right time. The Houston Texans, on the other hand, they're no strangers to winning this division. The AFC South, they've won it 3 of the last 4 times. You're looking at, winners of 11 games this year, and the interesting thing being division rivals, these teams played twice, obviously, this season, and they split the 2 games this season. And what's interesting about that is the teams the teams split the games, but the road team was the winner in both matchups. So the Colts won in Houston and the Texans won in Indianapolis. Both games were very close, both decided by 3 points. To me, this is the game of the weekend. I believe that this game has the makings to be a tight battle down to the wire. And I'm going to go ahead and send it over to you, and you tell me what you think, Josh.
Well, to kind of bounce off of what you said about being surprised about how well the Colts did, I just want to bring up a point that Josh McDaniels actually built that coaching staff. And the Colts defense is surprisingly good. He brought over a guy from the Cowboys, defensive coach, and that guy has not allowed a 100-yard rusher defensively, which is amazing for the Colts. The Colts, you used to go in and say, okay, well, I want to be giving about 150, 200 yards a game against them. This year, not one rusher over 100 yards. Now, I'm not saying they haven't.
That's a very interesting stat because obviously you and I both think of the Colts. We think of Peyton Manning's Colts, where you're basically just trying to outscore teams every game. The defense is an afterthought. So
yeah, which I mean, it's crazy because they basically went in with a small defense and Chris Ballard did a good job of doing some drafting, and they got the right players in to get a little bigger and beefier up front, and that rush defense is pretty good. I'm not saying that it's going to be the same against the Texans this time around. I feel like the Texans might actually be able to run the ball against them. The matchup I'm looking at, though, is Deshaun Watson against the secondary. And the reason being, Deshaun is just a dynamic player. I'm a big fan, him coming out of college. He beat the Alabama defense, which was amazing, to be honest. But I really see it being close. Probably a 20-17 game, field goal to end it for the Texans. I see Andrew Luck having a solid game, but Andrew is a gunslinger. He is going to make a critical mistake that puts the Texans in short field for them to get the game-winning field goal.
Like what you just said, but I'm going to disagree with you.
Uh-oh.
I think that this is the week that Indianapolis goes in and says this season hasn't been a fluke. Watch this. And Andrew Luck is going to go off. He's going to tee off against the Houston defense. And which is wild because the Houston defense is obviously strong. They're third against the run, so don't look for anything crazy on the ground. Luck is going to expose the secondary. I think he's going to tee off on him. I think Deshaun Watson makes plenty of plays. This is going to be a good old-fashioned slugfest. I don't think neither team does anything crazy on the ground. Like you said, the Indianapolis rush defense, much, much improved. This is definitely a game where I think it just comes down to who has the better quarterback. And I think it's Indianapolis. I think Luck is back. Obviously, he's proven that, this was a guy that 2 years ago no one thought was ever going to play again. And he's back, and he's with a vengeance. And he goes into Houston, and they win. And I say that they win 35-31. Take it to the bank.
Wow. Hey, man. I mean, the Colts offense has been solid this year, so I don't blame you for saying that. I just feel like the Texans will be able to game plan very well for Andrew. I really do.
So just to recap, everybody, picks this week. Dallas, Seattle. I picked Seattle. Josh has picked Dallas. The Philadelphia-Chicago game, we both picked the Bears to move on. In the AFC, the Chargers-Baltimore game, we've both picked Baltimore to move on. And for the Indianapolis-Houston game, I picked Indianapolis to move on. And Josh has picked Houston. Very, very exciting games this weekend. Tune in next week. We'll talk about what we got right, what we got wrong, and we will definitely preview the divisional games for next week. Thank everyone for listening. You have listened to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. This is Cecil with Josh. See you next time, guys.